Chapter 17, A Night Alarm and a Golden Prize. What life is there like to bold Robin Hood? It is so pleasant a thing. In merry Sherwood he spends his days, as pleasantly as a king. After spending several days at Wakefield with the merry pinner Georgia Green and his bonny bride Beatrice, they all set out once more for Sherwood, Robin Hood, Will Scarlet, and Little John, with Marian dressed also as a forester. George and Beatrice came with them, both of them clad now in Lincoln green, and Beatrice bubbling over with delight and amusement at being dressed as a man. Their first day's journey was mainly down the road, and their only moment of danger came when, towards evening, a knight fully armed, with a dozen men at arms behind him, swung round a corner in front of them at a trot and came past before they had any chance of hiding. The knight did not stop, but his visor was up so that he could see them clearly. He passed without appearing to take any notice, but on looking back, Robin saw that he had reined in his horse and was gazing intently after them. "Walk on, as if we had noticed nothing," said Robin quietly, "but follow me quickly and quietly into the wood as soon as they are out of sight. I think that was Sir Guy of Gisborne, who is my sworn enemy." "And my sworn lover," added Marian, "and for that I fear him all the more." Once round the corner of the road, Robin led the way quickly into the thick woods, first over flat country, and then along a narrow path which led between rocky and tree-covered hills. Meanwhile, the sky became overcast, and rain threatened more and more as the evening closed in about them. "Where are you leading us?" asked George at last. "To seek shelter for the night," answered Robin, "and we shall need it. There are some friends of ours who live near here and are always ready to welcome us, and to help us if any danger threatens, as I fear it may." As they wended their way by rough and narrow paths, they met a peasant with a spade over his shoulder. "Whither go you, my masters?" he asked. "There be rogues in that direction." "Can you show us any direction," answered Robin, "in which there are no rogues?" The peasant grinned and stood watching them as they threaded their way down the steep side of a valley, at the bottom of which a small river dashed and foamed over its rocky bed and glimmered gray and white in the last faint gleams of twilight. Very soon it was quite dark, and the rising wind, with the whiplash of rain, foretold a coming storm. Presently, however, they saw light below them, and on Robin, winding his horn, an answering note came up to them, and presently they came to a small stone house, little more than a cottage, built on the edge of a steep cliff overhanging the river, which swirled through a narrow channel just here and tumbled down a series of low waterfalls. The door stood invitingly open, and on the threshold was Allan-a-Dale. "Welcome, welcome, good Robin Hood," he cried, "and welcome to your brave followers also. My wife and I are indeed honored by your company. Come in quickly out of the storm." "I fear that we bring danger with us," said Robin, as they came into the great stone-flagged room which served as kitchen and hall, and indeed the whole ground floor of the little house all in one. And when he had introduced George and Beatrice, and made Allan's wife guess who the disguised Marian was, they all sat down on rough benches round the fire, to a good meal of broiled meat, with a choice wine to follow it. Then Robin told Allan of their adventures, and heard all that Allan had to tell him of the difficulty he was having in winning back his wife's lands and house from the clutches of the Bishop of Peterborough. "These battles of the law," ended Allan, "seem as unending as this civil broil between Prince John and the Earl of Chester. I would that King Richard were home again. Then we should have our lands without any further trouble, and a better house than this in which to entertain you." Robin sighed. "If Richard were home again," he said, "Marian and I would be man and wife, and if the king forgives me many things, living once more in my father's house at Locksley, where Sir Guy now dwells. But life in the greenwood is pleasant enough, and I would miss it sorely." "Very true," said Allan, "but happy though we are in this solitary house, I would like to feel that we were safe." Even as he said this, his wife caught him suddenly by the arm and pointed to the one window, which was not yet shuttered, and the party, following the direction of her hand, saw the head of an armed knight with his plumes tossing in the storm, on which the light from within the room shone for a second before it disappeared. In a moment, Allan was at the window, swung to the shutters, and dropped the bar into place As he did so, there was a knock at the door, so loud that it must have come from the knuckles of an iron glove. "Shelter for a poor traveler who has lost his way in the storm," came a voice from outside. "Who and what are you?" asked Robin. "A soldier," replied the voice, "an unfortunate follower of Earl Ranulph, flying from the vengeance of Prince John." "Are you alone?" said Robin. "Yes, indeed," said the voice. "Pray let me in, kind cottagers. It is a dreadful night. I would not have troubled you but for the storm. I would have slept out in the woods." "That I believe," said Robin. "You did not expect a storm when you turned into this valley. Do you know that there are rogues this way?" "I do," answered the voice. "So do I," said Robin. There was a pause, during which Robin, by listening attentively with his ear to the keyhole, caught a faint sound of whispering. "You are not alone," declared Robin suddenly. "Who are your companions?" "Companions?" exclaimed the voice in surprise. "I have none but the wind and rain, and I could do very well without them." "The wind and the rain have many voices," said Robin, "but I never before heard them say, 'What shall we do now?'" There was another pause, and then the voice from without cried in an altogether different tone, "Look you here, Master Cottager. If you do not let us in willingly, we will break down the door." "Aha!" cried Georgia Green, who had been listening in silence to all this. "We, is it now, you plural rascals? Well, we're ready for you. You thought to rob and murder a poor yeoman and his wife, did you? But instead, you come upon a house well garrisoned." No reply was made to this, but instead furious blows were dealt to the door, which threatened speedily to break it down. Then Robin, Scarlet, John, and George drew back to the other end of the room, loosened the swords in their sheaths, strung their bows, and set each of them an arrow upon the string. Marian, without a moment's hesitation, took her stand beside Robin and made ready her bow also. But Beatrice and Allan's wife armed themselves with spits as long and as sharp as javelins, or short, throwing spears, and took their stands on either side of the doorway. Allan himself stood near his wife with his sword, ready in case any of the invaders should break into the house. At length the door gave with a crash, and a dozen or more armed men were seen in the opening, all with drawn swords in their hands. The instant the door broke, the 5 bows twanged, and as many arrows rushed unerringly to their marks, laying 3 of the invaders dead or sorely wounded on the ground, and disabling 2 more. Another man, leaping through the doorway, fell beneath Allan's sword. Beatrice struck at him with her spit, but missing her aim, plunged the weapon several inches into the opposite doorpost, where it remained fixed, making a new barrier under which all must stoop to enter the house. The remaining men, however, charged fiercely forward, and one of them wrenched out the spit and hurled it so mightily at Scarlet and John that, though it turned in the air and struck them only with its side, it stretched both of them on their backs. Now Robin, Marian, and Allan were fighting with their swords, while George, failing to draw his, snatched up a great wooden cudgel and felt at once more at home with it than with any other weapon. Now the fight waged fast and furious, Beatrice and Allan's wife joining in as best as they could, hurling cooking pots, stools, and even articles of china at the most convenient enemy heads. George, with 2 strokes of his cudgel, laid 2 men insensible on the floor, and turned just in time to see Robin's sword shattered to pieces by the iron mace of the knight who commanded the party of attackers. Marian was defending herself valiantly against 2 swordsmen, and as George charged, roaring across the floor to Robin's help, these 2 turned their attention to him, while Marian leapt forward to meet the knight, parried his blow so dexterously that the sword flew from his hand, and a moment later a well-aimed kettle, hurled by Beatrice, laid him on the floor. Marian immediately sprang astride him, and setting her sword point to his face, bade him surrender and bid his men cease the combat, or she would slay him there and then. "Mercy, good sir," gasped the knight, in tones which at once revealed his identity. Put down your swords, men. We are fairly beaten. Guy of Gisborne, said Marian, flinging back her hood so that he could see who had defeated him. I have you at my mercy. That I have always been, gasped the knight, and only for love of you have I sought so hard and so often to take you from Robin Hood. How did you find us here? Asked Marian. I passed you on the road, answered Sir Guy, and recognized my rival Robin Hood. By the time I had turned and come after you, you were lost in the wood. But a lucky meeting with the peasant at the head of this valley showed me where you were to be found. Sir Knight, said Marian, many times you have sought the life of my lord, and of me as well, for I could not live were Robin no more. And do you think me so spiritless as to believe that I could be yours by compulsion? You know well that I would die rather than that, and death is easy to find. Let me strike off his head, said Robin grimly. We have been troubled by this false knight all too long, and now if he lives, our friends here will be in danger. Not so, said Marian. Sir Guy, you shall swear by the oath you hold most sacred, first, that you will seek no vengeance on these good people who shielded us and helped us against you, and second, never more to pursue my lord Robin Hood or me, and on those conditions you shall live. And if you break this oath, added Robin, there is no more mercy for you. Then Guy of Gisborne swore what was required by the honor of knighthood and his hope of salvation, and departed into the darkness with all his men, living, dead, or dying. We are well rid of an unwelcome guest, said Robin, when the broken door had been mended as best they could and the rest of the damage repaired. But I am sorry, good friend Allan, and your sweet lady, that this rough and unseemly broil has come to disturb your house. Never trouble about us, said Allan-a-Dale. This has not wiped away even so much as a tenth of our debt to you, and praise God, none of us are much the worse for this fray, except for Scarlet and John. And if they drink enough of my good wine, they can blame their headaches onto that. By the mass, cried George Green, I love this life of yours, good Robin. Better every hour of it that I live with you and your merry men. What say you, sweet Beatrice? I wish I could wield a sword as well as Maid Marian, Beatrice answered. George, you have failed in your duties towards me. By not teaching my wife to fight? Laughed George. By Our Lady, no court in Christendom would accept that as a cause of complaint. And so the night wore away with laughter and song, and after they had slept and rested well, the 6 travelers bade a grateful farewell to Allan-a-Dale and his wife, and set out once more on their way to Sherwood. I hope that no more adventures befall us before we are safe in our own glades, said Robin. But George differed over this and grew more and more disappointed as they came further and further down the road which ran through Sherwood without meeting any but stray peasants or yeomen. It was growing again towards evening as they neared the place for turning off the road into the path which led towards a secret glade, when suddenly they heard voices ahead. Shh! Cautioned Robin, and a broad grin overspread his face. I know that voice. It is our fat priest, Friar Tuck. Come quietly hither behind these bushes, good George, and I believe that you will see how we gather our tithes in Sherwood Forest. Yes, the good friar is collecting subscriptions for King Richard's ransom. The road ran through an overshadowed dell just there, and peeping over the bushes, the travelers saw Friar Tuck, his mighty quarter-staff in his hand, talking with 2 trembling priests. Benedicite, boomed Friar Tuck. Go not so fast, my brethren. If you cannot spare a piece of silver for the needs of a starving brother, you can at least spare a piece of gold to go towards King Richard's ransom. Alas, alas, replied the priest, we have not so much as a penny piece between us, for this very morning we met with robbers, who took from us everything we had. If that be so, said Friar Tuck, then come with me, and we will see whether good Robin Hood, the friend of all poor and needy men, cannot lend you some gold out of his store. But the 2 priests showed no desire to follow this suggestion. Indeed, they were both filled with fear, and would have run away there And then, if Friar Tuck had not seized each of them by the scruff of the neck and forced them down to their knees. "I greatly fear," he said unctuously, "that you lack the virtue of truth, and I am resolved to hear your confession before you go hence." "Oh, spare us, good friar," wailed the priest. "Have pity on us." "That will I," quoth Friar Tuck. "What I do is but for your soul's good. You said just now that you had no money. Therefore, let the three of us kneel down here and now and pray that money may come to us." There was no help for it, so the priests in trembling voices began to pray for money. And as they prayed, they groaned and wrung their hands. But Friar Tuck sang his offices with a fine full voice, and sang loudest of all when the two priests wept and lamented. "Now," said he at length, "let us see what money heaven has sent us in answer to our prayers." "No money, no money," quavered the priests, putting their hands into their pockets. "Better to search each other's pockets," said Friar Tuck, and search he did, with such good success that more than 600 pieces of gold were soon laid in a glittering pile on the ground, of which not more than a dozen coins came out of Friar Tuck's pocket. "Here is a brave show," cried Friar Tuck when all the pockets were empty. "Heaven has taught you generosity, even if truth is still denied you. But speak the truth now, or my cudgel shall seek it in your thick heads. Whose money is this, and whither were you taking it?" "Alas," lamented one of the priests, "the money was raised by the abbot of St. Mary's, and we were bearing it at his command to good Prince John, who is now at Ashby de la Zouche, not far south from here." "Then, indeed," cried Friar Tuck happily, "it could be put to no better use than to complete the ransom which shall set free our dear King Richard to come home into this unhappy country and punish the wickedness and cruelty of Prince John and his evil followers. Here I give you 1 piece of gold each. That will take you to Ashby. And if Prince John does not reward you handsomely for using his money in so good a cause, why, you must sell your horses or beg your way back to York. Now, get you gone speedily, and say that Robin Hood is forwarding the ransom money for his king's return." The 2 frightened priests, still weeping and lamenting, clambered upon their horses, which stood waiting at a little distance, and went galloping away in a cloud of dust, while Friar Tuck stood by his pile of gold and bellowed with laughter. "Stand, base friar," shouted Robin suddenly, in a feigned voice. "Down on your knees, or I send an arrow into your heart. There are 6 of us here, and we will have no mercy unless you render up your gold." Down on his knees in the dust went Friar Tuck. The laughter cut short suddenly, but as he heard the 6 coming up behind him, he leapt to his feet, whirled up his staff, and rushed upon them, roaring, "Robin Hood forever!" "Have a care with that great twig of yours," laughed Robin. "If you drop that on my head, it will be Robin Hood for his everlasting rest." "Robin, good Robin, and John in Scarlet," cried the friar, "and gentle Maid Marian too. How filled with joy I am to see you. Look you here what I have collected. A golden prize for you. And look what I bring with me," answered Robin. "Brave George Green, the pinner of Wakefield, who now is one of us, and with him his bride, the lovely Beatrice. Make them welcome, good friar." "Welcome they are, by the mass," boomed Friar Tuck. "And welcome are you back to Sherwood. Oh, there will be feasting and drinking tonight. Come away quickly. I am like to faint with hunger and thirst at the very idea." And away they went arm in arm through the forest, Friar Tuck carrying his golden prize and singing right lustily. Robin and Marian, Scarlet and Little John, drink to them one by one, drink as ye sing. Robin and Marian, Scarlet and Little John, echo to echo through Sherwood shall fling. Robin and Marian, Scarlet and Little John, long with their glory old Sherwood shall ring.